Welcome to Diligent Canine, and today I'm going to talk about training equipment. Now, I'll break down this video into some separate segments in the future to talk about the different components as we go on, but this will be a general overview of the training equipment that I recommend and that you need to get started for your dog. So, first off, I've got a treat pouch and a clicker. Clickers, they range from really cheap to pretty cheap, $5 or less. You can get them on Amazon, any local pet store. And what this is a mechanical device that makes a noise when you push a little button. You've probably seen like little noise makers. Again, they're pretty much all over toy stores, dollar stores, pet stores. You can get them really cheap, and I've talked about marker training before in earlier videos on learning and other videos in the basic series. So this is what you use to mark mark a behavior before you reward it. This one came with like a little bungee for the wrist strap, and I've actually moved that over to my e-collar remote. So that's a clicker, pretty simple, works really well, use it. The treat pouch is not essential, but it definitely comes in handy. It's real simple. It's like a purse type thing to put your food in, or you can put like a small ball or something in there. I like it. I use it a lot as well. It kind of keeps my pockets from having dog food in them and things like that. Although Ray Allen does make those pretty cool pocket protectors for the front pocket on your pants and the big pocket on hoodies to do the same thing, kind of put a barrier between the food and your clothes, and that's particularly important if you are using raw food, hot dogs, frozen Bill Jack, things like that are gonna kind of smell bad. Especially if they sit and ferment in your clothes. So a treat pouch, a simple device. I love it for going on walks and going places. I keep it with me. I can keep it, wear it in the front, wear it in the back, on top of my shirt, under my shirt. Really useful. Next, let's talk about some other rewards. A couple balls are pretty handy. The more similar you can get them will be really useful later on for teaching your dog an out. Also, exercising them is really good when you have multiple toys, because you can throw one and the dog brings it back and you throw the other one. That's a really good way to exercise the dog, where they're pretty much doing a constant sprint back and forth without a lot of time to sit and reset in between, where you take the ball out and throw it again and they go, come, stop. You can kind of just go back and forth. Tugs are also pretty good. This is actually just a cheap nylon leash that has broken. They do make rolled linen or jute tugs. They work really well. One thing to note with tug toys is that they are not chew toys. I made that mistake at least twice. And left it with my dog, and he absolutely destroyed it, and in pretty short order as well. So tug toys are for tugging, not chewing. That is what chew toys are for. By the way, I do separate rewards, so I only have one ball that my dog is allowed to chew on. It's a Kong. I also feed him out of it sometimes, so that is the only toy that is his, that it remains accessible and available to him 24 hours a day for him to chew on and kind of stay busy throughout the day. Rewards and other toys and equipment stay packed up. They're my toys. My dog only gets to use them. Anyway, back to tugs. Do not go to your pet store and pay $10, $15, $20 for a piece of rope with a knot in the end. If you want to be really frugal, go to a hardware store and pay like less than $1 for 2 feet of hemp rope or something like that, and tie the knots in it yourself. It holds up really well. One thing to note on that is the thinner rope, actually about 1/2 inch or 3/4 works better than the whole inch. I found that the whole inch, like boat rope, the knots don't stay in very well. The smaller rope, the knots stay in the ends a lot better, so it actually lasts longer than the thicker rope because it doesn't come unraveled. All right, let's get into some leash stuff then. I've got a regular slip lead here. These are pretty inexpensive as well. They're good for applying leash pressure or teaching your dog leash pressure because it goes around their neck and slips onto it. And if the dog starts to move away from you, it just tightens up on the neck and you can kind of guide them back and then it loosens up. So that's good for teaching a lot of foundational stuff, especially with small dogs, puppies, things like that. I use it occasionally for different things, but again, it's cheap, it's good to keep on hand. Then I've got my real leash. I use a 6-footer. I don't have it with me, but I have a shorter 4-foot one as well. I would recommend leather. I have tried many synthetic leashes. If you're a vegan Nazi or something, go with the synthetic. I'm sure they make durable ones out there somewhere. My experience though with cheap synthetic nylon leashes is they just don't hold up, and they turn into tug toys. So invest in quality leather. It will last, it will hold up. One other thing to note on leashes is pay attention to the clasp. That is the thing that is most likely to fail, not the snaps, although you do want to look at those as well, make sure they're sturdy. This part right here, where the clasp swivels, is actually, you see this one's a little loose, is the weakest part on the leash. So when you're going to buy a leash, pay attention to that. Just make sure it's heavy duty, proportionate to the size and drive of your dog, and not going to break and end up in the trash can in a week or two. While we're on the subject of leashes, I also use a long line for a lot of things: recalls, foundational recalls, developing relationship work, keeping the dog interested in me. This isn't anything too complicated. Basically, it is to allow the dog to have some distance, much more distance than say the 6-foot leash. And then, so you give the dog some freedom, but also set a limit on what the dog can do, and it helps you train that recall and bringing the dog back to you. You still maintain control in the situation. This is actually 30 feet of cordelette, climbing cordelette. You can use just about anything, any rope you want. Climbing webbing you can get at REI or any outdoor store. You can buy it online. I've seen, I think a lot of pet stores carry long lines as well. Again, it's really just a 15 to 30 foot piece of webbing or light rope that does not have a handle on the end. So again, that is for developing some distance and some freedom with your dog, but also maintaining control. The next thing I'm going to talk about are collars and harnesses. I actually don't have a flat collar on hand because Dean has broken his. I'm still a little disgruntled about that. I'm not sure how a alleged steel cobra buckle breaks on a collar, but it happened. So I am without a flat collar at the moment, though I have been eyeballing one of those sexy Tricos flat collars, sold by Ray Allen as well. But a flat collar is your basic dog's collar. It's flat, it's around the neck, doesn't do anything fancy, holds their tags, and looks nice on the dog. Also gives you some control over the animal, so you're not having to like pick them up or grab their fur or their head, anything like that. So other types of collars, again, I'll do a separate video later going through different collars in more detail. I've also got a pinch collar. I do not, and I've never used a choke collar, but I have used a pinch collar. And what this does is goes around the dog's neck, and when the dog pulls, it doesn't choke them. You can see there's a limit to how small it will get. So a choke chain, kind of like I showed with the slip lead, it won't stop. There's no stop gap on it. So your dog has a much higher chance of choking themselves. So if the dog is just pulling, it can cause a lot of damage to their trachea, their windpipe, vocal cords, and you don't want that to happen. So pinch collars look kind of mean and nasty, but they're actually much more safe than choke chains. So again, as pressure is put on the chain, the prongs sort of turn inward and just pinch the dog's neck a little. Again, I'll cover this in more detail. I'll put it on myself. Same with the e-collar. So when we talk about that, an e-collar or a shock collar gets a lot of bad rap. Again, I will demystify that in a later video as well. I'll put it on myself. In that video too, I've done it before. I actually did it, I took it out of the box and immediately put it on myself before it even ever touched my dog or my dog ever saw it. So this particular one is made by Dogtra. It has a vibrate mode and the shock setting ranges from 0 to 100 on this one. And just for reference, I don't think I've ever used it at 100. Typically around the house, a Dean is set on maybe like 10 or 15 out of 100, and a hard correction in drive when we're like walking around in public and a cat darts out or something, that's maybe been like 40 to 60 out of 100. So that's that. Again, I'll go into more detail later. I do use a harness. This is, I think, is made by Ray Allen, but I think it's actually an older model, so I don't know if they sell it anymore. This particular one is weight rated. Again, I'll talk about harnesses and collars in more detail later because I have bought several harnesses by some brands that I will name because I didn't like their product. I didn't think it lived up to my expectations or their advertising. So harnesses are really good for utility. I will say in this video, the one thing they're not good for is stopping your dog from pulling. Don't do that. Don't be that person. Harnesses actually encourage your dog to pull on the leash. Think about it. Sled dogs in Alaska, what do they wear? They wear a harness. They don't wear a collar. When sport dogs actually sled pulling is a sport for dogs. So, kind of like football players pushing a sled, dogs or a strongman pulling like a bus behind them. It's a thing for dogs too, to pull a sled of weights. But they don't use a collar, they use a harness. So harnesses, by nature of their design and how they put pressure on the dog, actually encourage leash pulling. So don't be that person that throws a harness on your dog because you think it will stop pulling, and definitely don't be that person that puts one of those muzzles or those, what are they called, gentle leaders on your dog's face. Don't jerk them around by their neck to stop them from pulling. Be smart, educate yourself, subscribe to my channel, and learn to use the right tools. Okay guys, I've got some of my training equipment on. I'm about to go for a walk with my dog, so I wanted to show you some of that equipment in use and how it functions. So I've got my dog Dean here, and he's got his e-collar on. He's got his harness on and a leash attached to the harness. And then on my person, I've got my treat pouch and my e-collar remote. And I'm not carrying a clicker because I use a verbal marker, so I of course have my voice. And I will note that there are some times where I just want to go for a walk with my dog, to relax my dog, to relax myself, and that's okay. That's a great way to build a relationship with your dog. But there are also times where I want to use walks as exercise as well as training opportunities. So I need tools to do that, and I've talked about those tools before. And I want to make sure I have all of them available when I go for a walk or I go anywhere in public with my dog. So what that means is I have means to correct my dog, and I have means to reward my dog. So when I catch him doing something right, or I ask him to do something like walk closer to me, I've got food to reward him. If he starts to pull on his leash, I again have my voice. I have a leash to apply pressure. If we are walking off leash, which we do sometimes, again, I keep the leash with me, but I have some control in the e-collar. So when my dog darts after a cat or maybe gets too far out ahead of me, I give him a gentle correction with the e-collar. And as soon as the dog stops or comes back to me, I mark and reward it. So I might do some videos specifically on that. I might even post them up today to show you what that looks like. But again, like I mentioned before, I'm not senselessly punishing the dog. I'm correcting the dog so that his mistake is turned into a positive experience by getting rewarded for a behavior that I want. In other words, the picture gets very clear for the dog. This is what you're not supposed to do. This is what will get you rewarded. So that's some of the equipment I use when I'm going for walks and training my dog. And thanks for watching Diligent Canine.